Hi, good evening. I'm Joanne Schultz, and welcome to my show, It's All About You, where I get a chance to do some coaching with people who are guests and have things that they want to talk about. And tonight, very special night, Lisa's with us, and Lisa's been here before, for those of you who've seen her before. So nice to have you back.
Well, thanks for having me back.
We'll see, huh?
Yeah, I've had homework to do. Thank God this isn't a grade.
So what I thought we would do is we would kind of briefly recap what we talked about last time, and then sort of what your homework was, and then the status of that, and see where that leads us.
Okay.
So last time we had talked about, you're an attorney. Why don't you give a little bit of background for yourself?
Right. I'm an attorney. I practice law in San Francisco. I'm a criminal defense attorney. I represent adults and minors.
Mm-hmm. And so what we had talked about was you were really interested in a kind of a marketing your business with a little bit of business development thrown in.
Exactly.
You wanted to branch out, expand your business, move away from certain contractual arrangements and get into some new ones.
Right.
And potentially even some new markets. And
exactly.
I'm not an expert in marketing and business development, but I understand it because I run my own business. But I, more as a coach, we talked about what was important for you, what were some of the process pieces that you needed some help with.
Right.
So we had talked about a 30-second elevator speech, which really is about what do you want, what are you going to say to people. So you were going to think about what you wanted, who your ideal clients were, and where your contacts were that could help support you in that. That was sort of what you left with thinking, I got to think about this stuff.
Exactly.
So where are you? How'd it go?
Well, I found out that the 30-second elevator speech is much more difficult than I had even imagined.
Yeah.
I've started to think about it, but what really got me going was, who is my client?
Yeah.
Because, of course, I'm thinking my client is the end user, the person charged with a crime, the minor, whatever. And what we talked about last time made me understand, and I've really given this a lot of thought, that perhaps the end user isn't my client. Maybe that's somebody else. Mm-hmm. Maybe it's the parent or the family member or even teachers, judges, probation officers. Maybe they're the client. Maybe that's who I need to market to. And I've just begun thinking about it and probably need to think about it a whole lot more to expand my definition of who the client is.
Right, right. So those people then, how would they help you create a difference in your business?
Well,
if you didn't go after the end user, but you talked about teachers or probation officers or et cetera.
Right. Well, especially with teachers, police officers, those are unlikely people to direct clients to you. But in fact, I've dealt with these people a lot, and I think I've earned a certain reputation for being diligent and good outcomes for my clients. So police officers, when somebody they know or they care about is in trouble, they might come to me. Same thing with teachers who identify students that are having problems, could go to their parents and say, I know of a good lawyer that might be able to help your child in the juvenile court or in a educational expulsion hearing or something like that.
Right. So those people, you said that they aren't likely to make referrals, though, or they would make referrals?
I think they would. But they're not conventional. They're not the people that you normally think of. When you're thinking, at least I have thought, other clients would send referrals to me. Well, in this economy, clients necessarily are not the people who are the decision makers when it comes to money. They don't have, the funds, the resources other people do. And so I'm thinking maybe I have to cultivate a different kind of person to be the client rather than former end users directing new clients to me.
Oh, that's an interesting turn in the effect of the economy then, huh?
Right, it is, yeah.
Oh, so that does really change your referral base.
Right.
And people need to hear from you. I think the other piece about that was interesting for you last time, too, was the idea of maybe educating others about not just ultimately getting legal cases, but also maybe doing something more with your business.
Right. And we talked about, what kinds of groups could I go to? And I've been thinking about, church groups, because I belong to, a religious organization. That might be a natural place to start. Not necessarily saying, look what I can do for your kids, but to talk about larger issues that affect everyone. Minors and drug use, or kids getting in trouble with drinking and driving, or adults having problems with various aspects. And just talk about it in general terms, not so specifically, but giving people general information. Oh. So religious groups are one identifiable group of people, but I'm trying to come up with others, maybe PTAs, organizations like that, maybe social organizations, and offer to speak to them. In fact, a gentleman by the name of Jim, who's I think one of the cameramen tonight, made some wonderful suggestions to my husband, and those were passed on to me about going to professional organizations and making half-hour, 15-minute, half-hour talks on various aspects. So I'm thinking about doing that as well.
And when you think about that as marketing, does that become like more interesting for you, less interesting, more work, less work?
Well, it's more interesting and it's a lot more work.
In what way?
Well,
both. Why is it more interesting and why is it more work?
Because it makes me think outside of my box. It's more interesting. It gets me outside of, the courtroom and trying to hone in what people really want to hear about, because they all have ideas about the criminal justice system, but how does that system relate to them? How do the laws relate to them, and where can you direct people to go if they're having problems with their kids? They may not necessarily end up in a courtroom, but they might need some ideas for resources beyond court or outside court. Right. And the same thing with adults. What kinds of programs are out there for people who are in trouble that will keep them from coming to court, or as a stopgap, perhaps? But it's also more work because I'm in court all the time. Yeah. And I'm finding it very difficult to manage my time so that I can devote time to just thinking and promoting, coming up with ideas and promoting those ideas to other people. Yeah, well, that is one of the major dilemmas. I mean, Stephen Covey wrote about it in his matrix, the urgent important matrix. Tell me about it. So Quadrant Two is what's important but not urgent, which is relationship building, R&R, long-term, short and long-term goals. Things that are more development, like you're talking about, would fit more into that. You're not on fire, you're busy. Right. I remember as a young entrepreneur going to SCORE, the retired executives that do, through the Small Business Association, do advice giving. And they said, I remember them saying to me, you're like every other entrepreneur, you're too busy working to go out and promote yourself. Right. So how do you figure that out? You have to rob time from somewhere else. Okay. And that's where I'm maybe having difficulty identifying what areas to, it's nice that you use a word that I'm familiar with, rob. Yeah. What pockets do I steal from so that I can come up with a critical mass of time to devote to work development, job development? Well, and I think it gets back then to what's your vision? How do you want it to look? I mean, to me, what you painted when you were talking about this broad base of people to connect to me, you were painting a picture of becoming an expert go-to person for information for anybody on youth infractions. Right. Or even adults, but really about youth more. It seems to be where your heart is at. It is.
And if that's the case, then what you're also searching for is to look to get out of a of a specific environment that you're in now, and potentially even do not only different environment-based work, different situations, but also different kinds of work.
Right, right.
So it's not just the same thing.
Right.
And you could still, the common variable could be that you end up in court, that's your specialty, or not, right?
Right.
So you're really getting a bigger picture of yourself.
So what you're saying is I need to spend maybe more time honing my idea of what I want to become before I go to the next step?
Well, I've seen it done both ways. You know, to me, you can start with the core of what do you value and what does that look like, and then put that into action. Or you can start with a series of actions and see if that gives you clarity around your value. I've seen people do it both ways. So you can go out and experiment. You could say, well, I'm going to, like Jim's thing, maybe you go speak at his church to a group of people for 30 minutes on a Thursday night. And that's something that's outside of court time,
Right.
for example.
Right.
And you kind of see what you like about that, don't like about that, what you would do or not do, right? Or you find some other, a PTA group or a teacher's conference or something, and you go present. You put in a call for papers.
Okay.
And you go present somewhere. And see if that kind of gives you, well, is this kind of an inventory approach? Like, well, if I do these, is this going to give me more clarity about what I want?
Right, I see.
You know? I think it's, ultimately, you've got to get clarity around the value.
Right.
And then the actions come from it.
Yeah, it seems like that is the most important thing, and then move from there.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's what I would definitely, that's where I usually coach from. But, I've seen both work.
Well, let's say that I sort of define or identify what it is that my core values and what I want to do. Then there's the whole part of what we were talking about, robbing the time and
yes.
Okay, so I'm typically in my office by 7:30 in the morning. I typically leave 6:30 every night. So I'm there 11 hours, sometimes later, every day. Of course, much of that is spent in court or in a jail or something like that.
Right.
And I work in sort of a crisis business.
Yeah.
Everything is a crisis, and the clients that I represent are looking at a lot of time. Sometimes there is not so much, but most of the time, they're serious felonies. And you can imagine that not only am I dealing with my clients, but I'm dealing with the client's parents or their loved ones. And people are seduced by the imminence, the emergency of the whole thing.
Right.
And so, of course, that impacts me. It's really hard for me to say, you know what, I need not to be dealing with your particular issue right now. I need to spend a block of time working on the case, if not you. And once I get beyond that, how do I justify spending time working on business development when I'm in this crisis mode all the time?
Well, that's a really great question. And you can continue to do it this way.
Yeah.
How you're doing it,
Yeah.
and you still won't have any more time.
Right.
Right?
Right.
So I guess maybe the easiest place to look first is, where are your natural times in a week where you do reflect or spend any time in personal reflection?
That's a question. I don't have any.
Oh.
So maybe I have to create that.
Maybe that is part of the creation.
Okay, so give me some hints on how to start.
Well, where are you, if you were to take 30 minutes for yourself and take your journal with you, or however you think. Do you think and write? Are you a thinker and a writer? Or?
I'm a thinker, and then maybe I'll write something later on, but I'm not a thinker, journaler
Do you
kind
keep
of person.
notes in your calendar or anything
In my
like
calendar,
that?
I'll keep notes.
So something like that, maybe, potentially. So do you, tell me about your weekend. Do you work your weekends as well?
I do. Now, I try to set aside one day out of the weekend for myself to do absolutely zip. And the other day, I would like to spend, or usually spend, about 3 or 4 hours with a client working on a case or whatever. So
Right.
preparing for the next week.
Right. Do you go to church on Sunday? Or a service?
Yes.
Kind of?
Yes.
Or something?
Yes.
Do you use that time for yourself? Is it a quiet time? Is it a...
Are you talking about church specifically, or are you talking about, because it's an interactive process? So.
Okay, so it's a vibrant, interactive environment.
Right.
Okay.
It's not a reflective process necessarily.
Okay. So we are going to have to find a place for you, a space.
Right.
A space. And it can take many forms. When do you do your best thinking?
I do my best thinking on my way to work or leaving work on the train. I've gotten to the point where I just love to sit on the train and reflect on today, coming here, reflecting on what the day was, what I could have done better.
Excellent.
And in the morning, I like to ride in on the train, read the paper. Of course, I'm scanning for what's gone down in the city lately.
Yeah.
But reflect on what I've read or what the day is going to be like, what issues that I have to concern myself with. But maybe that's a chunk of time I could just take toward, business development.
Yeah. Especially since you're already inventorying your day.
Right.
You're debriefing with yourself.
Right.
Maybe what you need is a key question to add into that mix.
Oh.
Like how, how your day contributed to your next best future.
Give me a for instance. This is interesting.
To your marketing, to your business development, to your love and passion for youth, to, what elements gave you any sort of bridge between what you're doing now and where you want to go.
Oh, good idea.
Because I think what you really have to get clear about is what is it that you're going after.
Right.
I don't think you have to know exactly how it's going to look. I think you just got to know what it is that you want to, at the end of the day.
What's the goal?
What is it that you want to have done?
Right.
Or want to have felt like or experienced.
Right.
So maybe throwing in not just a kind of debriefing of the logistics of the day, but maybe something more about, so what is next? So what's the best parts of my day? One of the phrases I love, a very simple question, is what do I want to keep, start, and stop doing?
Oh, all right.
So if you're already taking inventory, you can look at your day as, this is what I want to keep, this went well, I like how this is going, it was rocky, but I still like it, or whatever. What do I want to start doing? Maybe something that you've left behind, something that you recognize, I really should have, that would have worked better, doing it, blah, blah, blah. And what do I want to stop doing? And you can frame it as it relates to how you see 6-12 months out. So
is the first step then to sort of figure out what my overall goal is, and then
keep going,
and then maybe think about these 3 items, which is keep, start, and quit or stop.
Yeah. Or
in relationship to my overall goals. Is that your idea?
Yeah. Well, I think you can do it either way. When you're not clear about what your vision is, about what you value,
right,
then if you take this inventory and you say, what do I want to keep, start, and stop doing, you can kind of sort of whittle it out.
Shake it down. I see.
Yeah. However, if you're clear on what you want and you get to the end of the day and you say, did I keep, start, stop doing what was important for me? Either way, it will work.
Well, I like this idea because I think I sort of compare my work style to my desk drawer.
Oh.
The desk is gorgeous. Everything is in its place until you open the drawer. And then, oh my God, who lives here? I have a young woman that comes in once or twice a week, her schedule permitting, and she comes to my office and she literally has to hunt through my desk to find what it is that she needs. I mean, she not only has to hunt, she has to paw through it. And so, exactly.
Yeah.
So that business about keeping and starting and stopping, there's a lot of stoppage in my desk drawer.
Oh my God, that is so revealing. That is so great. So what is that tie-in there? What?
Well, I think I have a hard time letting things go. Just like in my desk drawer, I dwell on things that, have long since gone on to bigger and better rewards. I'm still ruminating over them, things that I can't affect a change on. Mm-hmm. So those are perhaps the things, just like in my desk drawer, I've got 4 pairs of scissors. Who needs 4 pairs of scissors?
Right.
I get rid of 3 of them without any trouble at all. Maybe that's what I have to start doing, is chopping through those things that really I can't make a change on anymore, that are just holding me back.
That's the stop doing.
Yeah,
what do you need to let go of?
Yeah.
Maybe that's your focus.
Well, it could be.
Because I think what happens that I've watched people do is that once you start the process of finding space for yourself to think about what you want, that it creates momentum so that holding on to and that actually using that space becomes much easier to do. It's this first time of trying to find that put that wedge in it somewhere
Exactly.
is the hardest.
Yeah.
But if now you know about yourself that you've got a lot of clutter,
Right.
that it might also be mentally cluttering you.
I think so, because I can become very easily distracted, particularly if it's a project that has to be done. I'm interested in doing it, but I will find all kinds of distractions to keep me from doing it. And maybe part of it's fear.
Oh.
Fear of not having it come out as perfectly as I want.
You are totally peeling an onion here.
Well,
or an
I
artichoke,
think so.
I guess, was we're in California. An artichoke.
But that's, the idea of ending up with less than perfection is really a stifling thing for me.
Yes.
And how do you present a product or a case and do the best you can, but understand that it doesn't have to be perfect. It's hard.
Yeah.
And it keeps it. I know that it keeps me from doing all the other things I'd like to do, and maybe one of those things is having enough time for business development.
Right. Because you're very good at what you currently do.
I think so.
So what it would mean is that you would potentially go back on a learning curve.
Right. I don't know if it's the learning that is bothering me. It's the end product and not having it be, because it's somebody else's life, somebody else's years that I've got to be dealing with. And if I have not given my absolute best effort, have I failed this person? And I think I need to examine that.
Yeah. I think you're onto something. I think you're right. So maybe in your reflective space, this train time at the end of the day, is thinking about, what is keeping you? What's really keeping you from getting to what you want next?
Right.
So maybe it's not really, maybe it's both. Maybe it's what do I want next, and then what's keeping me, and then drill down into this fear. It's so great that you understand that your procrastination is linked to perfectionism.
Right.
Because a lot of people will label themselves as lazy, and you're pretty clear. You're like, no. And so a lot of perfectionists will actually not start something because they know they can't do it perfectly.
Right.
And you're right, it's very stifling.
Right.
So could you then, in essence, take small steps? Could you dip your toe in the water and try a few things here and there and over there to give you some chance to see if what you're thinking about in this whole development is really where you want to go?
Well, give me a for instance about what you mean about that.
Well, if you think you want to impact educators or a probation officer or a church group and give people information about what they should know about youth and the law, then what if you just did something like offered to do a brown bag lunch talk or a church talk or something that's already within your environment, and just see if that was of interest for you.
Oh, okay. And I guess I wouldn't have to educate my listening audience to everything about, juvenile justice, but maybe some particular facet that would appeal to them.
Right.
Okay.
And so somebody who's maybe more familiar and you kind of know their situation or the type of parents or the type of issues, then you can go in and say, hey, give me 30 minutes, I'll talk to your people about this.
Oh, okay. Well, I can try that.
And you can do that without prepping, probably.
Probably, yeah.
You have to think about it, but you know the issue. So you make it very simple on yourself, just enough to get some toe in the water there.
Okay. So just sort of like a skimming an overview. It's more information than they have, but it's not too stressful. I don't have to make it perfect.
Right,
okay. Right.
But I think the bigger to do, we have to wrap up. This has been so interesting. You're so interesting.
Oh, thank you. So are you.
Thank you. It's a mutual admiration society. But the interesting piece is that you have come up against so many issues people come up against. Space for reflection. Where do I give myself that time in order to figure out what it is that I want so that I can go out and actually do that?
Right. Okay.
And that's your conversation.
All right. Well, I'll start that conversation, and maybe in a few shows down the road we can get back to my original homework.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you're gonna go after it, really trying to get some space.
Right.
And it's already built into the train. So you're not inventing sliced
something
bread.
new.
You're just
giving myself permission to do it.
Yes.
Okay.
That's it.
All right.
Thank you so much, Lisa.
Well, thank you.
So interesting.
Thank you.
Thanks everybody for watching the show tonight. Isn't she great? It's just great. Let's wish her luck. Good luck.
Thank you.
And we covered so many topics in this half-hour session that you could spend a session on all by itself because she's got such a great level of awareness. So thanks again, Lisa, and for sharing, and thank you for all for tuning in to It's All About You. And we'll see you next week. Bye.